You never really know someone until they humiliate you in public. That realization hit me somewhere between the second breadstick and the third glass of house red. It was a Friday night. I remember because I wore my good dress. Not the one that makes me look skinny. The one that makes me feel powerful. Or at least, it used to. We were at one of those overpriced, dimly lit Italian places. The kind that serves you 6 raviolis for $40 and calls it a culinary experience. My husband Charles loved it there. He liked pretending we were above average, that we were refined. Charles, by the way, is the kind of man who drinks scotch he can't pronounce and lectures waiters about wine pairings. He also hasn't washed a dish in 10 years and thinks therapy is for people with weak minds. A real gem. That night we were celebrating something. I don't remember what. Probably one of his boring promotions at that lifeless financial firm, where he spends his days flirting with receptionists and pretending spreadsheets are thrilling. He had insisted on making a reservation. Told me to look nice and skip lunch so I'd have room. Yeah, that should have been my first clue. So there I was, hair curled, lipstick perfect, starving. I hadn't eaten all day. Just coffee and a vague hope for dinner. By the time the waiter brought the bread basket, I attacked it like a woman, on death row. Charles raised an eyebrow. That look. The one that silently screams, "You're embarrassing me." I ignored it, smiled sweetly, buttered another roll, took a sip of wine, tried to focus on the violinist in the corner who kept playing off key. Then came the appetizers. Burrata with figs, fried calamari, something with truffle oil I couldn't pronounce but devoured in seconds. Charles didn't touch much. He was saving room. I, on the other hand, was eating like I meant it. And why shouldn't I? We were celebrating, weren't we? At least that's what I thought. Dinner arrived. Pasta drowning in sauce, meatballs the size of softballs, and dessert? Tiramisu. My weakness. I was halfway through it when it happened. Charles leaned back, swirling his glass of Cabernet like a smug villain in a Hallmark movie. Then, loud enough for the tables around us to hear, he said, "You know, darling, you really don't have to finish everything they bring to the table." I blinked. He chuckled. "In fact," he added, "maybe you shouldn't. We're not trying to feed a village, are we?" My fork paused midair. Someone at the next table snorted. And I smiled. Not because I found it funny, but because that's what women do, right? We smile when we're bleeding. We laugh so no one sees the crack. Charles raised his glass. "To my wife," he said, "who apparently thinks she's in a competitive eating contest." I didn't respond. I just stared at him. Noticed the tiny crease between his brows, the smug glint in his eyes, the way he clearly enjoyed the attention. And that's when I realized he wanted them to laugh. The strangers, the waitstaff, even the off-key violinist who stopped mid-bow. He wanted them all to see how funny it was that his wife couldn't control herself. That was the moment something inside me shifted, like a window slamming shut in a storm. I excused myself to the restroom. My hands were trembling, but not from shame. Not anymore. From rage. I stared at my reflection. Lipstick smudged, eyes glassy. And yet, there was a spark there, a strange sort of clarity. You see, Charles didn't marry me for love. He married me for status, for image. I was a pretty accessory once. A trophy. Now, 10 years in, he saw me as a burden. A mouth that chewed too loud. A body that dared to change, and I'd let it slide. For a decade. The comments, the subtle digs, the way he called me babe like a placeholder. But tonight was different. He made it public. And now, so would I. I walked back to the table. Smiled. Picked up my fork. Took another bite of tiramisu. You're right, I said sweetly. I do eat a lot. He looked pleased. Well, at least you're self-aware. I leaned in. Just like you talk a lot. He blinked. Especially, I continued, when you're lying to your assistant about working late. His face dropped. Oh, don't look so surprised, Charles. You think I don't know about Melissa? The little notes in your coat pocket? The hotel receipts in the laundry? The tables around us went silent. A couple of forks froze mid-air. Charles forced a laugh. Honey, are you feeling all right? I'm feeling amazing, I said. In fact, I think I'll have another dessert. Something rich. Something decadent. You know, since you'll be eating alone from now on. He looked around, panicking. I grabbed my purse. Enjoy your scotch and your secretary. Then I walked out. The violinist gave me a little nod. And that was the beginning, not the end, because that night didn't break me. It woke me up. Charles thought mocking me in a restaurant was the worst thing he could do, but I hadn't even started. I went home, took off the dress, deleted our joint bank account. App. Ordered 3 books on revenge psychology. Slept like a baby, because some women cry when they're humiliated, others, they plot. There's something oddly calming about rock bottom. Once you hit it, the noise stops. No more trying to please. No more pretending to be enough for a man who counts calories more carefully than kindness. After the restaurant fiasco, Charles didn't come home that night. He sent a single text at 2:17 a.m. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Classic. He still thought he was in control. Thought I would cry. Beg. Apologize for embarrassing him in front of a room full of strangers. Instead, I smiled and started a folder on my desktop called Project Tiramisu. I know. Petty. But fitting. You see, I used to be a project manager before Charles convinced me to take a break from working to focus on our home, our future, our fake little white picket, life. What he forgot was that I'm good at managing things, especially disasters. So I started with the obvious. Surveillance. Not high-tech Bond-level stuff. Just smart. First, I called my cousin Mallory. She's a paralegal with a taste for drama and access to court databases. I didn't ask questions about how she got certain information, and she didn't ask why I wanted it. In less than 48 hours, I had a list of Charles's recent credit card transactions, a printout of his known aliases on dating apps, and the address of a condo downtown rented under the name C.T. Lakewood. Lakewood is his middle name. I almost laughed. Of course, he would use that. Sounds vaguely aristocratic. Turns out, Melissa, the assistant, wasn't the only one. There were others. A personal trainer named Paige. A real estate agent named Danny. A barista from the juice bar who couldn't spell chai. If you spotted her, the C and the HI spent 2 full days organizing the receipts, screenshots, and photos into a color-coded binder. Yes, a binder. I'm old school like that. On the 3rd day, Charles showed up at home with flowers. White lilies, which I hate. He tried to kiss my cheek, but I tilted my head. You said we needed to talk? I asked. He cleared his throat. Yes, about your behavior. I almost applauded. My behavior. He sat on the couch like a weary king, rubbing his temples. You embarrassed me, Lauren. Publicly. I don't know what's gotten into you. I sat across from him, calm, legs crossed, binder in lap. Oh, I said. You don't? He blinked. I opened the binder and turned it to the first page. A blown-up screenshot of his Bumble profile. Username, Mr. Financially Fit. Bio, looking for someone who understands work hard, play harder. His face drained of color. I'd say this is what got into me, I said. He stood up. This isn't. I turned the page. A bank statement showing a $947 charge at a boutique hotel. Then a photo of him and Melissa, blurry but undeniable, holding hands outside that same hotel 3 weeks ago. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Silence is underrated, especially when the other person is busy unraveling. Look, Lauren, we've been distant. I've been under pressure at work. I never meant to hurt you. He was sweating now. Actually sweating. Watching him twist and flail in his own guilt was almost satisfying. Almost. But I wasn't done. He sat back down. I'll break it off. With all of them. I'll delete the apps. I don't want a divorce. Divorce? I repeated. Oh, Charles. That's not what I want either. He looked relieved. Pathetic, really. I smiled. I want everything. He didn't get it yet. I stood up, set the binder down, and walked to the kitchen. He followed like a confused puppy. Want the house? I said, opening the fridge. I want the accounts, the car, the investment portfolio I pretended not to notice, and of course, the lake house you bought under your cousin's name. He stammered. How? I turned. You're not very good at hiding things, Charles. But I am excellent at finding them. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Then he said the dumbest thing he could have said. You can't prove any of that. Oh, Charles. I took out my phone and played the audio recording. Him, just last week, bragging on the phone to his buddy Greg about how he put the deed under a dummy name to protect it from his nagging wife. The color left his face for good. That was the first stage. Legal, end. Second stage? Reputation. I created a burner account. Actually 2. One for the neighborhood Facebook group, and one for the anonymous corporate gossip forum that all his coworkers practically lived on. Using a combination of screenshots, financial leaks, and carefully worded posts, I painted a picture of Charles as a sleazy exec with a pattern of sleeping with subordinates, using company funds for personal pleasure, and manipulating female interns into silence. Was it technically true? Let's just say it was accurate enough to spark a quiet HR investigation. Meanwhile, I scheduled lunch with Melissa at a vegan cafe she loved. I wore a loose sweater and brought tissues. I just wanted you to know, I said, voice trembling, that Charles lied to both of us. I thought you deserved better. She cried. Real tears. Told me how he said he was separated, that she thought they were serious. I nodded sympathetically, paid for lunch, left her with a list of all the other women I'd found. Why? Because betrayal burns hotter when it's shared. Let them come for him. Let them compare notes. Let them turn on him like a school of piranhas, but I still wasn't done. Stage 3, humiliation. Charles loved parties, loved being the center of attention. So I planned 1. A charity gala. Black tie. Hosted at the art museum. I told him I was organizing it for my women's empowerment group, which he always ignored because women's groups just talk about their feelings. I told him to wear his best tux, that he would be honored that night for his support of strong women. He preened. He prepped. He even practiced a speech. What he didn't know? I wasn't honoring him. I was exposing him. In front of 300 guests, I stood on the stage and delivered a speech titled The Mask of the Modern Gentleman. I spoke about manipulation, infidelity, power imbalance in the workplace. I described in vivid detail a man who used charm as a weapon and cruelty as entertainment. And then, I said his name. People gasped. A woman in the back spilled her champagne. Charles stood frozen, a deer in the most public headlights imaginable. He tried to interrupt. I raised a hand. "There's more," I said, and there was. I played a short video montage. Carefully edited clips from texts, voicemails, social media DMs. Faces blurred, names removed. Except his. His was crystal clear. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I smiled. Because this was no longer about pain. This was about power. When it ended, I stepped down and left through the back exit, right as the whispers began. Charles didn't come home after that. I wasn't surprised. But the best part? Stage 4. Personal freedom. I sold the house, bought a condo overlooking the bay, started my own consulting business for women in transition, divorce, career change, new life chapters. Turns out there's a huge market for women who are done apologizing. As for Charles, he lost his job 6 weeks later. HR investigations tend to move faster when you provide a 30-page dossier. Melissa quit. Danny wrote a blog post. Paige sued. And me? I gained 10 pounds from joy, because food is not a weapon. But I most certainly am. It's funny how silence can be so loud. After the gala, Charles went off the radar. No more flowers, no more speeches, no more condescending texts. Just quiet, delicious, satisfying quiet. I was sipping a cappuccino on my new balcony overlooking the bay when I got the email from HR. Subject: Thank you short. Professional, but laced with subtext. We appreciate your cooperation and the information provided. Mr. Carrington is no longer employed with our organization. I took a bite of my almond croissant and smiled. He was out. No press release. No severance package. No goodbye party with a stupid gold watch. Just gone. But if Charles had taught me anything, it was that men like him don't disappear. They plot. I was ready. See? He still thought he was the wolf, the big bad, the alpha. But wolves are loud, predictable. And I had become something else entirely. I was the forest. And he was lost in me. The first attempt at retaliation came 2 weeks later. I was at my accountant's office finalizing the sale of the lake house. Yes, that one. When she raised an eyebrow. "Did you authorize this wire transfer?" I looked. It was a request to move $90,000 from one of our joint accounts to a shell company I'd never heard of. A familiar name popped up in the details. Lakewood Holdings. "Oh, Charles," I muttered. I canceled the transfer, froze the account, called my lawyer. The man was desperate. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then came the second move. He filed a defamation suit against me. Cute. Except he filed it in the wrong county, used outdated evidence, and spelled my middle name wrong on the forms. My lawyer had it dismissed in under a week. I framed the dismissal notice and hung it in the guest bathroom to remind myself how far I'd come. But then, he went for the jugular. It was a Friday morning. I was wearing yoga pants, no makeup, happily eating leftover pasta in bed when I got a text from a blocked number. You think you've won. You haven't. See you in court. 10 minutes later, a sheriff knocked on my door. He handed me an envelope. Charles was suing for emotional damages, claiming my malicious and calculated smear campaign had caused him irreparable personal and professional loss. He wanted money, reputation, silence. I didn't give him any of the above. What I gave him was war. Court dates were set. The courtroom was beige, cold, and filled with bored interns and buzzing fluorescent lights. Charles wore a navy suit a size too tight and a smirk he couldn't quite hold together. His lawyer was slick, young, eager. The kind of man who thought a fast voice could outpace a weak case. Mine was older, calm, wore loafers that squeaked a little when he walked. Let them talk themselves into a hole, he told me, then hand them the shovel. So I did. I sat there every day, hair clean, makeup neutral, demeanor calm. Charles tried to paint me as vindictive, obsessive, crazy. He brought up the gala, the beender, the Facebook posts. His lawyer read my words out loud like a horror story, but the courtroom was quiet, because for every accusation he made, I had documentation, screenshots, emails, bank statements, testimonies from the women. Even Greg, his idiot friend, testified against him to save his own skin. By day 3, Charles looked like a man walking into a fire with gasoline cologne. By day 5, the case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning he couldn't try again, meaning he lost in public, in front of cameras. The press had shown up by then. Whispered rumors from the gala had snowballed into headlines. Corporate creep loses defamation case to ex-wife he publicly shamed. Hell hath no fury. Woman outsmarts. Husband after restaurant meltdown. The internet was having a field day. One meme showed me holding a fork like a sword with the caption, "She ate too much? No. She served justice." I laughed until I cried. But the real cherry on top? That came a month later. I got a call from a production company in LA. They wanted to option my story for a docu-series. Something like Dirty John meets The Staircase, but with less murder and more empowerment. They asked if I'd be willing to consult. I said yes. They flew me out. Put me up in a suite. Gave me catered lunches and a stylist. One of the producers, a woman named Clara, asked me if I'd ever imagined this moment. I told her no. I never imagined I'd be humiliated over a plate of pasta by a man who thought shame was a seasoning, I said. She cackled. I hope he sees this, she said. Oh, he would. The show trended for days when it aired. And Charles? Well, he tried to move to Austin for a fresh start. Got hired at a mid-sized firm doing consulting. But 3 weeks in, someone left a copy of the docu-series DVD on his desk with a post-it note. "We don't fat shame here. Enjoy unemployment." He was gone by Friday. I didn't send it, but I appreciated whoever did. You might be wondering where I am now. What happens to a woman after she's dismantled the life of the man who underestimated her one too many times? Well, I sleep better. I eat better. I breathe like I'm not walking on eggshells. I started dating again. Nothing serious. Just dinners. good conversations, men who laugh with me, not at me. I started painting again, too. It had been years, but there's something beautiful about messy colors coming together to form something whole, something unapologetic. And the best part? I stopped shrinking. Not my body, myself. Because the truth is, Charles never mocked me for what I ate. He mocked me for existing. Loudly, boldly, in full color. He wanted a wife who stayed in her lane, who smiled small, who starved herself into silence. What he got was a woman who feasted on freedom. And now I eat whatever I want. And if I ever get dessert, shamed again, well, let's just say I've got a whole new recipe for revenge. Bon appétit.